Welcome to the EduStar Talks podcast, where we invite some amazing educational rock stars who lives to inspire and loves to encourage. Hosted by an educator, facilitator, and the EdTech coach, Sumedha Sodhi. In this show, we will discuss about how educators can amplify student engagement, shake up learning, and can rock the curriculum content with 21st century skills. So if you are looking for ways to rock your class, stay tuned with us and be the never to be forgotten. Dr. Maria Lice Curran is a Hello everyone, this is Sumedha Sodhi, your host for episode number 14. And today we have Dr. I as our edu rock star for the day to talk about a topic which is very close to our heart, that is reinventing education. She is going to share her expertise today on this particular theme and make us all aware about the latest changes which have come into the field of education. Hello, Dr. I. We are excited to have you on the show. Welcome to the Edu Rockstar Talks podcast. How are you doing? And from where are
I,
you joining us?
yeah, I'm doing great. I don't feel like a rock star, but thank you so much for having me. And I'm joining you guys from U.S., United States. I'm based in outside Washington D.C., the capital.
Thank you. Thank you so much, ma'am. So, dear audience, let me tell you Dr. I is an educator and an entrepreneur. She received her master's in arts degree and PhD in communication from Syracuse University and University of Maryland. She is the founder of Classroom Without Walls, an alternative school to future proof the next generation. Dr. I is also an Adobe insider, Adobe education leader, and HubSpot Academy instructor. As a thought leader in online education, Dr. I specializes in incorporating social media and creative technologies into traditional curriculum to enhance student engagement and acquire 21st century skills and much more. You will be amazed to read and learn about Dr. I when you come across her interaction with us on this particular theme, that is reinventing education. So, let us start the show. Nobody can argue that the world has changed dramatically in recent years and continues to change with amazing speed. Yet we have not changed the basic approach to educating our children for past so many years. Think about the changes our children will face before they retire from the working world in 60 years. Will our current approach to education and adequate to equip these children to face the emerging world? Can we continue with our assembly line approach to teaching our children rather than acknowledging and nurturing the unique gifts and talents that each of us present? Should education be restricted primarily to the first 20 years of our lives? Or should the focus shift to lifelong learning? All these answers Dr. I is going to share with us. So, here comes our first question for Dr. I. We are really inspired with your school, Dr. I, that is Classroom Without Walls. Can you please share with us what inspired you to start this school and what does it aim at?
Yeah, great introduction and great question. So my journey is very interesting, and I actually grew up in China. So I'm a first generation immigrant, and when I was a kid in China and has at least when I was a student there had a very competitive, extremely rigorous academic curriculum, and I went to a very good school and throughout my life. Yeah, I was a very good student, and like I feel like most kids in China are good students. And I was working really hard, and so by the time I got to high school, I just felt the pressure was so intense, and the grade was everything. And grade was who I am. If I'm a good student, I'm a good person. If I have a good grade, I'm going to have a good life. I'm going to have a good future. So the pressure was really intense. And it was so much so that I actually developed a very bad eating disorder for 3 years. I really struggled. But externally, when people look at me, oh, wow, she's doing amazing, right? I was smashing all the A's, the teachers loved me, and I was doing really well academically speaking. But internally, I was really struggling. I was like, is this learning? Is this my life? Just like smashing all the A's, trying to get all the highest grade possible, competing with each other, extremely competitive. I don't even feel like I had any friends, just mainly competitors. So I was mainly competing with each other. So internally, I was really, really paralyzed. I struggled. That's why I turned to food. I stopped eating for 3 years as a way to feel like, wow, there is something in my life that I can still control, which is food, which is really unfortunate. So I think at that time, that really planted the seed in me to really try to find a better learning model in which learning is fun, is enjoyable. At the same time, you are improving who you are. But that was not the learning I received when I was a kid. And fast, that's why I left China after my undergraduate. So I came to the U.S., went to graduate school, and then became a assistant professor and then later associate professor. But after teaching in the classroom for a few years, I started to realize, oh wow, the U.S. education system also has quite a few issues. And at the same time, as I was teaching at my university, I also get a chance to visit different countries. I was doing speaking gigs, and I realized the education problem that we are talking about today is not only limited to the United States, to China, and to quite a few countries. And at the same time, I also developed a, a brand on social media, on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on different places. And I started to openly talk about the problems in education. And oh boy, I got resignations, recognition, and people are resonating with me from like different countries. So like, yeah, we resonate with you, and this is also the problem we are struggling with in Korea, in India, in Australia, in UK. And then I realized, oh wow, the problem that we are facing is a global issue. So I think all those kind of stories from different directions and different phases in my life, they really inspired me to do something. And before I decided to resign from my associate professor to start Classroom Without Walls, I actually just got my associate professor position. I was actually on sabbatical. So I was able to finally take a break from my day-to-day routine, right? Teaching, research, and doing community service. And so during my sabbatical was really the time I really started to question my life, right? And I I don't want to say I hate my job, but I didn't enjoy my job as much as I should. And I remember when I was during my sabbatical, one day I was listening to this podcast, and this person was talking about how he actually loves Monday, he loves Tuesday, he loves every single day of his life. I was like, what? I don't love Monday. I hate Monday. I was like, what are they talking about? I was like, so that was like during the sabbatical, I really started to explore some deeper questions like, what can I do, first of all, to make myself enjoy my work a lot more? Because after teaching for 10 years, and if the only question you heard from your students or Dr. I, will this question be on the exam? And that is not enjoyable to me, that is not learning. But I felt so confined in this system, right? There are things that I wanted to teach, but it is not within my discipline, and I want to teach different things. I want to teach differently, and I want to eliminate exams. I don't want to give my students grade, but all those things I cannot do within the structure of a established education model. So parallel to my own personal maybe crisis, And is this dissatisfaction with what is happening in the classroom and in my students, and then hearing how people from social media on my personal brands, on LinkedIn, on different social media channels resonating with me, telling me that education crisis is a global issue. And I finally asked myself this audacious question: do I want to be part of the problem to continue to perpetuate the situation, or do I want to be part of the solution? And my answer at the time was, and continues to be, I want to be part of the solution. And therefore, I resigned. It is definitely a hard decision to say goodbye to a very comfortable, prestigious teaching position. But I think it is about time. So I resigned from that position and started building Classroom Without Walls, which is an alternative model. And what I believe at Classroom Without Walls is that traditional school based learning is only 20% to help teenagers and young people to become future ready, career ready, and life ready. 80% actually happens outside the classroom. But that 80%, so few people are talking about, so few people are actually helping our children develop. And that 80% is what we focus at Classroom Without Walls. So that kind of in a nutshell is my story.
Oh, that is indeed inspirational. Thank you for sharing your inspirational story with our audience today. It is definitely going to affect the way they are teaching and nurturing the future citizens in the classroom. And that is how I resonated with your thoughts when I heard your videos, your webinars. And that is what made me also reflect. Am I preparing my students for the future employability skills or not? And thank God I got this opportunity to hear your thoughts today on my show today. It really means a lot. So, the ma'am, the current system of education, as you talked about, both at the school and university level, assumes that a finite amount of knowledge is available, and the emphasis is given on cramming as much of as this knowledge is possible into the available years. So how do you think that education needs to be reinvented, and what do you want to see that should be changed in the education system?
Yeah, great question. So first of all, and everyone, every single student, when I was a student, every single parent, we felt that grade is everything, right? Grade is equivalent to learning. It is wrong. It is not true. And so much research has shown that, like for example, in the US, we use GPA, grade point average. So research has shown that GPA, grade point average, is actually inversely related to innovation, meaning that the higher the grade, the less likely a kid is to innovate. So think about it, right? In the classroom where, like, as parents, I'm guilty of this self before I discovered this body of knowledge. So we were pressuring our children, hey, get that A, 95 is not good enough, get 100 and get that A plus. We're pushing them so hard to get the A's and the full marks, but we're hurting their ability to innovate. So I think that is something that we need to disrupt right away. Like, as soon as possible, but it is going to take a long time for people to realize we need a better way to evaluate and assess our students. And a grade is not the good way. And unfortunately, that is so now I run my own school, run my own company. And oftentimes, when I have a conversation with a parent who are interested in checking out Classroom Without Walls, they always tell me, oh, my kid is an A student, my kid is a B student. I'm not even asking them that question. They started right away as if the grade were their kids' identity. I was like, no, I don't even care about your grade. I want to learn more about your children. But they treated grade as their kids' identity. I think that is absolutely wrong. And now knowing the research, how we are trying so hard to earn that A, you are actually hurting your children's ability to innovate. I was like, wow. And just recently, I read another article talking about how traditional schooling, like, striving for academic excellence only, are actually also killing our children's curiosity. So this is a big study. They were investigating how many questions and that our children are asking. So this study is based on children in the United States. So they asked they observed 4 years old, 5 years old, very young children. And so they ask on average 107 questions per hour. Okay. 107 questions per hour. But as those kids become older, they become middle school students, become high school students, guess what happened? They stopped asking questions. So the number of questions they ask decreased from 107 per hour to 2 to 3 questions per 2 hour period. And that is something I observe on a daily basis. And that is what is killing me as a college professor before I resigned from my job. Because at the time, I just give birth to my own kids. So I was looking at my own children. They were so curious, so many questions. They just cannot stop talking. But then when I go to school, see my own undergraduate students, 18 years old, 20 years old, they were like numb. They were like 1 year in, 1 year out. They couldn't care less what you were talking about. The only thing they cared about was, will this be on the exam? That is absolutely painful and hurtful to really go through on a daily basis. And I knew something was missing. I knew something was wrong at the time. So, like just talking about this, how the traditional school structure is hurting curiosity, killing our children's ability to ask questions and even think. Just yesterday, I did a TikTok video talking about the biggest problem facing our children today, teenagers, and is that they do not think. Think about it. When they go to school, they have a curriculum given to them, right? First grade, like every day you go to school at 8 a.m. and 9 a.m. you are learning math. Like 11 a.m. you are learning literature. So everything is designed for the kid without their involvement. So since day one, we're taking away their agency to play a very important role in their own education. So if you do that, you are telling children what to learn, what to think. So if you do that for 10 plus years, by the time they graduate from college, of course, they become the way they are, right? They don't know how to think. They don't have any emotional intelligence. They don't know how to think critically. They don't know how to create. On the other hand, they are so good at listening. They're so good at following instructions. They are very obedient. But is that what we want in our children? If we want them to become leaders in the 21st century, the answer is no. And my favorite education model comes from Bloom. And he has like kind of a triangle shaped hierarchy of learning. And the lower level of learning, the lowest level of learning is remember facts and information. And that is what we do at many, many schools. We ask our children to regurgitate, to remember facts and information, and to do an exam. I can't tell you how many students told me, Dr. When I need to prepare for exam, I only needed to study like 2 weeks in advance. I just prepare, I learn, I memorize, I regurgitate, and then after the exam is over, I forget everything. That is not lifelong learning. That is not real learning. So going back to this Bloom model that I was talking about, so the lowest level of learning is remember. That's the lowest level of learning, the lowest cognitive development level. So as educators, as parents, we need to push our kids to move away from the lowest level of learning, which is remembering, but go to the highest level of learning, which is to create. So because of my relationship with educational system, the current educational system, and or my belief, and I actually homeschool my children. So we have so on this wall, and I have a big poster. I have this Bloom taxonomy on that wall. Like my children will see it every day. The lowest level of learning is remembering, and the highest level of learning is create. So every day they will go through this process: learn, reflect, and create. So the creation part is they will teach me something. So they will learn. I have a number of reflection questions for them. So they will reflect. So every day at 8 p.m., and we get together as a family. So my kids will actually present to me what they have learned. So they do different creations. Sometimes they create an ebook, they create a YouTube video, a TikTok video, a canvas slides, and or like a drawing, because my children love drawing. And they do all sorts of creative projects to teach me what they have learned. So I think as educators, if we really want to prepare children for the future, we really have to move away from that education model where we're only prioritizing remembering and regurgitating information, because that is replaced by AI. Google knows everything. There's no need for them to remember everything. And we need to move away from that and move to the higher level of learning, which is to create. So every project that we ask our children to do, can we ask us, how can I redesign this project to allow my kids to create some original work, to demonstrate that they have learned something, right? And this reminds me of another thing that I always say is that the tell me, you are telling me what you have learned. That economy is over. We're moving to the show me economy, right? Which is also what I was talking about to create. So show me what you have learned. Don't just tell me, oh, wow, you earned 100 on that physics exam. Amazing. Excellent. Show me, how can you apply this knowledge of physics to create something? Because it is a totally different story. What I learned from my experience is that before I resigned, I was teaching social media, marketing, public relations, business classes. But after I resigned, I was like, wow, it is time to apply my own teaching to create my business. Oh my God, I had the hardest time ever. What I learned was that teaching and learning and scoring really high on exams, those things are totally, totally different from applying them in real life. So help and encourage our children to learn to create and design projects to allow them to show us what they have learned and to create. So that is kind of what I think a much better education model.
Thank you. Thank you so much, ma'am. Indeed, I also believe that this paradigm doesn't work for the 21st century. The quantum of knowledge has become so vast that it would be taking several lifetimes even to master a single discipline. What we need is children learning how to learn and provide facilities for lifelong learning and just in time learning, as you have rightly mentioned. And as educators, this is a time when we have to think about that if we continue with our assembly line approach to teaching our children, rather than acknowledging and nurturing the unique gifts and talents that each one of them represents. Should education be restricted primarily to only the first 20 years of our lives? Or should the focus shift to focus to on the lifelong learning as Dr. I is talking about? So, Dr. I, our next question for you is that how do you think educators today can create a better learning environment for the future generation?
Great question. This is something that I think about all the time. But before I answer this question, I want to follow up on what you said earlier. It is so crazy when you think about it, right? Our children, we think that, before they turn 20 years old, they spend this many years at school, and that is learning. And once they turn like 21 or 22 after undergraduate, and their learning is over, that is the biggest lie. That is the biggest lie, right? It like learning doesn't work like that. I really think we need to create this not 20-year curriculum, but 60-year, 100 years curriculum, right? Lifelong learning. And learning doesn't only happen in the classroom. I think because we define learning in such a rigid manner, and our students, they naively think and believe that learning only happens in the classroom, and they only learn when they go to a class. And that is such old, that is before the information age. And now people say there's YouTube University, there's Google University, and in social media marketing, like there are so many companies that are launching their own certifications. And I don't know if you catch the news. I think last year Google mentioned that they launched their own career certification to replace the 4-year college, meaning that If a kid wants to work at Google, they don't need to go to college. They only need to take Google's own certification, which will only take 3 or 6 months. That is revolutionary. That is very disruptive. And that is something that, like, every time I share this and educators become very defensive, I get it, right? And I'm not saying that, Google is going to teach everything. I believe in liberal arts education. But the question I'm trying to raise is that, does that type of learning only happen in the classroom? And my answer is no. Like, my children, we homeschool them, and really life is their best teacher. Life is teacher. Life is classroom. Where's our classroom? Life is our classroom. We don't even go to a physical building to learn. I think that notion, students need to stop believing that, right? Like, besides Google and Microsoft, there's so many companies launching their own certifications to really try to disrupt the traditional education model. I think educators need to feel a sense of pressure. Oh, wow, they are doing something. What is something that they offer that we don't offer at my school in the current education system, that students have to go through a different route to become career ready? So, to answer your question, I think for educators, the biggest change that I think we need to do is that we need to become practitioners. We cannot, I think there's a saying, those who cannot do teach, meaning that those who cannot practice, they actually go to the classroom to teach. And I think we need to disrupt that. And I think, reflecting on my own experience, and now I run my own company. I'm actually practicing social media marketing. I'm actually practicing creating and launching a business and learning from my own experience. And I'm a much better teacher. I actually understand what I was teaching before at a much deeper level because I actually am a practitioner. So I think for educators, we need to have more educators who are both educators and practitioners. Because I also noticed not all practitioners can teach, because teaching is an art and science. Just because you can practice doesn't mean that you can teach. At the same time, just because you can teach, it does not mean that you will be a good practitioner. And I learned that from my own experience. Even after I got a PhD, I still don't know how to practice what my degrees were trying to tell me. So we really need this unique group of educators who are not only teachers, but both teachers and practitioners. We check both boxes. We need that type of people so that we can teach in a way that is relevant to our students, and we can also teach in a way that is relevant to the industry. We can bring in the latest trends. We know what is going on, so that by the time students graduate from our program, they are work ready, right? Like, I remember a few years ago, I went to this conference, an academic conference, and they were talking about a research project. And the biggest conclusion of that research project is that after students graduate from college, they will need an additional 2 years to become career ready. I was like, that is wrong. The reason that they go to college, of course, is to learn, to discover all the softer side, but also to help them become career ready. Otherwise, why would parents invest so much time and money in their own kids' education? But I think that part is missing. I think if after a kid graduates from college, they still need 2 additional years to become career ready, there's something wrong in our education model. So we need educators, to become practitioners and educators at the same time. But right now, we do not have enough educators who can do both. And to make that happen, we'll need buy-in from school leaders, buy-in from local organizations who are willing to have, co-op, and who are willing to invest in our educators, to train them, to give them a playground, to practice their theory, to practice their knowledge. So it is really this notion, it needs a village, like, to raise the next generation.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for sharing those wonderful strategies with our educators who are listening to you. I hope if we incorporate these strategies, we can definitely take the learning beyond the classroom walls, as you have rightly mentioned. And past some of the researches I have read, that our education system around the world was being built on the industrial age factory model to teach basic reading, writing, arithmetic, a bit of history, and other subjects, the overt curriculum. And beneath it was the covert curriculum that was far more basic. It consisted of punctuality, obedience, and the repetitive work and the basic training requirements to produce reliable, productive factory workers. But will the 21st century world require just these capabilities? Or we have to think of the capabilities for the future generation to get a better employability skills. So how do you suggest the educators around the world can alter the environment inside the classroom and take learning beyond the walls of the classroom?
Yeah, great question. I think first of all, we need to understand what are the skills that our organizations, employers are actually looking for. So there's a very compelling Adobe study that came out last year, and they scanned millions of resumes and job postings and trying to discover what are the factors that will actually help our kids get hired, go to good companies, have a good job. So they identified 5 C's, and which include communication, collaboration, critical thinking, creative problem solving, and creativity. So those are the 5 C's that we need to be intentionally cultivating in our students. And in the same study, I think it is mentioned almost 70% of educators agreed that as educators, we are not doing a good job at helping our children develop those 5 C's. And so I think educators, first of all, need to see that bigger picture. And talking about those 5 C's, I'm just remembering another study from Harvard University, and they discovered 85% of a person's career achievement actually comes from soft skills. That is 85%. And only 15% comes from hard skills. But when you look at the school education model, most schools are only looking at the 15%. And we ignore the 85%. And the 5 C's I was talking about: emotional intelligence, human skills, and I call them essential life skills. Even when you look at Steve Jobs, he's such an amazing artist. When you look at all those great people who invented technologies, to me, they are amazing artists, right? So we need to see that bigger picture to understand that as educators, we're not only teaching them facts and information and the technical skills, the 15%, it is our job to also help our children develop the 85%, right? The 5 C, those essential soft life skills. And I think a really good way to shift the environment and to help our children develop those skills is to use technology. You and I, we both know Mary Alice. She's such an amazing lady. And I'm so in alignment with her approach. Digital citizenship, use social media, use technology for good. There is so much uneducated fear when it comes to technology, right? Technology is just a tool. It can be good, it can be bad, depending on how you are using it. And there's one project that I have tested with hundreds of students, and it works like a miracle across different age group, is to launch a live streaming. Like right now, this podcast is audio only, which is amazing. I think if we really want to help our kids to go to the next level, we can even challenge our students to launch a live streaming video based podcast. And that is such a great way for them to develop essential life skills. So I actually just finished working with a group of high school students in the US, and together I coached them to launch this live streaming kind of interview project. So the students, even just after one interview, they're like, wow, my confidence level, my communication skills, my public speaking skills are through the roof. That is only after one interview. And after the second interview, they were like, wow, I didn't realize I have so much potential. So I think what we can do is to incorporate, like, for example, if a teacher is teaching a class on computer science, right? So can we ask the students to use LinkedIn, to use Twitter, TikTok, whatever social media platforms that our students are using? Can they use those platforms for free and to practice digital networking to identify all the amazing computer scientists and to interview them? Not only do an audio based interview, but actually do a video based interview. And not only doing a pre recorded interview, but actually going live on Twitter, going live on LinkedIn, going live on YouTube, going live on Instagram to do that interview. And not only that, to invite the larger community to watch that interview. So if every single class can incorporate a project like that, we are going to create a much better environment conducive to students' lifelong learning, learning beyond the classroom, at the same time helping them become career ready. And this project is just like really amazing.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for sharing such amazing examples of the projects that you have shared with your own community, your students. And I think these are simply eye openers that how we can instill those life skills and essential skills and 6 C's of communication, critical thinking, collaboration that you have just mentioned. How important it is to integrate these 6 C's into the curriculum. And you also talked about the role of technology in reinventing education. So, since you are also an Adobe leader, I would like to request you that kindly give some acquaintance to our audience that which edtech tools do you suggest that must be integrated into the process so that these 6 C's or essential skills can be enhanced among the future generation.
Yeah, great question. I think the best place to start is to start with what you have, right? So like oftentimes, like when I go to a conference, you will be learning at least 20 or 30 like different tools. You feel so overwhelmed, like, oh my god, I don't even know where to get started, how to get started, and as a result you are not doing anything, right? So I think that is a wrong way to think about this. And so first, start with what you already have. And second, and in terms of Adobe tools, I really recommend Adobe Spark. And my students love Adobe Spark, and I personally have been using Adobe Spark for so many years, and my own children, and they also use Adobe Spark. So I think it is free. It is something that teachers can really check out, and also goes back to what we were talking about. The highest level of learning, which is to create. So after a lesson, after students learn whatever, can you ask them to create Adobe Spark page reflection? And even just ask your children or ask our students to create like a website using Adobe Spark, share who they are. The show me economy, show me who you are, show me your skills, show me your talents. Don't just tell me, right? When you look at a traditional resume, a piece of paper, this person is telling you, okay, I have this degree, I have that certifications, but what does that even mean? You have no idea. Like okay, how good are you actually? We have no idea. I have hired some people who look really remarkable on piece of paper, but in real life they are a disaster. Right? I think we all know those people. So show us, right? So Adobe Spark, it is such a great way. It is very easy to use. My own children started using Adobe Spark when they were only 6 years old. And so like everyone can figure it out, right? I think that is a great place to start. Adobe Spark, and start with what you have and go to the next level and Adobe Spark. I also love InShot, 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 to make like videos, to do clips. I'm also a big fan of Canva, Canva. I use Canva to do slides, to do videos, and just to different like bookmarks. My students use Canva to create resumes and different things. So those are some of my favorite tools. And I mean, like, you don't have to go overboard. Even one of the tools I mentioned can actually bring your teaching and learning to the next level.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for sharing your best tool list with all of us here. And it's been 40 minutes, and it seems that I can hear you and your thoughts for almost hours and hours, but looking into the consideration of time for our audience and for our guest, I would like to request you to share one last motivational message for our audience today.
Okay, so I'm going to share my favorite quote as an educator, which is something like this: when the flower is not blooming, you fix the environment, not the flower. So to me, that means, flowers are our students. When our students are not doing well, and our tendency is to label the kid, oh, you have ADHD, you're not doing well, this and that. Let's stop doing that. Let's fix the environment, aka our educational system, instead of fixing the student. Let's create an environment that allow our students to flourish, to grow, to challenge, to have fun, and to make a positive contribution to society as opposed to the current education model. So that is my call to action.
Thank you so much for sharing such a beautiful quote, ma'am. And also, please guide our audience that where they can find you, where they can connect with you, and learn about the great work you are doing for the community.
Oh, thank you. So, the best way for people to check me out is you can go to my website, which is classroomwithoutwalls.ai. You can also go to my LinkedIn. I check LinkedIn pretty often, which is my name, AIADDYSONZHANG. Send me a message, and I post regular content on LinkedIn. I also have a live streaming podcast, like, very similar to yours. Mine is a live streaming. It's live. People can watch me live and ask me questions to interact with me. And I go live every Friday at 12 p.m. EST. I don't know what time it is for you guys in your local time, but 12 p.m. EST. And the podcast is called "What Is School For?" And on the show we discuss, debate, and disrupt education. I have interviewed some of the most amazing, influential education professionals and students and parents on the show. So that is every Friday. So definitely come check me out. And yeah, let's together discuss, debate, and disrupt education.
Thank you for sharing that information, ma'am. So, dear audience, let us sum up the today's topic. Everyday people tend to think we do not have the ability or even the right to understand, let alone challenge the specialist. But in this quest for know-how, we are losing the know what, the meaning, the purpose of life, the context for applying all the knowledge. So it is up to us as parents, as educators, as change makers to make this shift happen. Let's have the courage to move ahead.
Thank you so much for having me. The honor is all mine. I hope I share something valuable. So, yeah, I look forward to continuing the conversation.
You have just listened to the Edu Rockstar Talks podcast with your host Sumedha Soti. Subscribe to the podcast on your favorite platform. Head over to subscribe, rate, and leave a review for us. It is very much appreciated. Do not forget to join us next week for another exciting episode. Thank you for listening to us, and be the never to be forgotten.